less money. Like, you guys can still be rich, whatever. Just turn it down a notch, because you're kind of making shit terrible for everybody else. You're treated like you're crazy. No, this is the American way. If you don't like it, then leave. And yet these ideas aren't radical. They're not even new. Most people who advocate for a more progressive tax system are only calling for a return to something that used to exist in this country. We just forgot about it. So I think it's important to do a little history lesson here. If you can believe it, there was a time where the working class in this country actually had it really good. And it was mostly because things got
So I came across this video and I thought it was so interesting because he gets into the greed that is going on right now, really, in America. It's been going on for decades now, but we see where we are. We're being told that the economy is great, but yet the average cost of a house has multiplied. Shit. But yet the average age of someone who buys a home today is like over the age of 45. And it used to be somewhere around late 20s, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there, not too long ago. So today, we are seeing so many inconsistencies, and we're seeing that the technocrats and the billionaire class are running the country. They just are. We got AI coming in. We have all type of advancements in technology, which are helping in some ways, but they're very creepy in others. And the middle class is constantly being squeezed out of the picture. The American dream has vanished out of the picture. Many are even going overseas to pursue it in other countries. Let's get into the video.
Bad during the Great Depression that the government was worried about the country collapsing. Thousands of banks had closed, millions of people lost their entire life savings, unemployment peaked at 25%. So in fear of a revolution happening, the government was like, all right, fine, we'll give you livable wages. Just please put that musket down. I don't like the way you're looking at me. So the New Deal was born, and with it came Social Security, better labor standards, the right to unionize, a national minimum wage, an 8-hour workday. And over the next 2 to 3 decades, America became the most prosperous country on earth. Productivity skyrocketed and wages rose with them. Extra profits weren't just redistributed to employees, but their employers were proud to do it. They would brag about how lucrative.
Man, that sounds like a dream to me. In my lifetime, I've never seen a time in America where extra profits were distributed towards the employees and not the CEOs and the owners of these multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. This was the true glory days of America economically, 1950s. 2025, we have gotten to a point where, again, the average income is nowhere near what the average demand is just to buy a home, not a lot, just to buy a home, a car, groceries, whatever it is that people need. We are not getting paid enough at this time. And that's not me selling socialism or communism. I'm saying that what we have now is not even truly capitalism. It's like crony capitalism. It's a capitalism that benefits the top 1% who owns something like 50% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the elite class. Insane.
If it was to work for them. Look, 37% of profits went to our employees last year because this is a team effort, and when we win, they win. In 1943, Johnson & Johnson puts out this mission statement that's like, here's our list of priorities in order. Customers number 1, we got to make good products. Employees number 2, everyone who works here needs to feel valued and respected. Our community number 3, we all want to live in a better world, and as a company of our size, we feel like it's our responsibility to contribute to that however we can. And finally, all the way at the bottom, our shareholders can just have whatever's left. Of course, we need to make a profit to survive and grow, but that should just come naturally as a byproduct of focusing on these 3 tenets. Compared to modern corporate standards, this is all such a foreign concept that it almost sounds like it's coming from a fictional universe. But this actually happened. This was just America 70 years ago. Now, during this time, what do you think the tax rate was on the wealthiest Americans? For reference, in 2025, the highest income tax bracket is supposed to be around 24%, but because of how many ways there are to circumvent the rules, it often ends up being as little as 3%. For someone like Elon Musk, who doesn't take a salary from Tesla and instead just owns a large percentage of its stock, as long as he doesn't sell any of that stock, then technically there's no income to tax him on. Now, we can still leverage the value of those stocks to make purchases, you know, like how money works, but it's still not taxable because of the rules. This is how people like him and Jeff Bezos can be, in terms of net worth, 2 of the richest people on the planet, and in some years pay $0 in taxes. In the middle of the 20th century, the tax rate on the ultra wealthy was not 3% or 20% or even 50%. it was between 70 and 94%. It honestly sounds crazy, but even a lot of the people being taxed understood that it was necessary for society to continue.
And the thing is, the more I advance in my years, I think, man, that's crazy. I used to think, why tax the rich so much if they've worked to get there? But now, as I've lived longer and I'm looking at the situation, just think about it. They're rich because the people working for them have made them that way. And the people buying their products have also added to their wealth. Yes, they've created, stores and different products and things that we need, technologies. We got the laptop, the iPhone, iPad, the modern television, the toaster, electric cars, so many different things that have made our life convenient. But the reality is they still need a body of working people in order to run these companies, these factories, these stores, for the products to be facilitated. Even if it's online, you still need people answering phones. You still need a delivery service to get the products to people's houses. It just doesn't make any sense for them to have so much of the wealth consolidated in such a small place where it just keeps compounding. And then you have the working class not even being able to pay a mortgage.
To exist. And having a strong middle class was a crucial investment into the future of the country. But I don't know, man. I just think it's kind of interesting that during what's referred to as the golden age of capitalism, the government did a bunch of socialism. During the period of time that birthed the idea of the American dream, the government was taxing the absolute shit out of the richest Americans and using that money to provide jobs and welfare programs for everybody else. A single income household working a regular ass job could afford to start a family, buy a house, send their kids to college, and retire at a reasonable age. No wonder people who grew up then gush about capitalism the way they do, because for them, it was great. But at this point, it is disingenuous to use that time period as the example for why.
And it's funny because you see so many of these rich people on these big podcasts. I don't care if it's left, right, middle, center, whatever. All these super rich people, whether they came from the insurance world or they came from the podcast world, which segued into mainstream media by way of any one of the major news corporations, whether they came through entrepreneurship or business, selling products, technology, social media, the entertainment. They got rich, let's say at least 10 to 20 years ago. They're peddling this capitalistic nonsense today as if it's the capitalism of the 1950s or even the capitalism of 20 years ago. Just 20 years ago. Look at the housing and the stock market just 20 years ago in comparison to what people were getting paid on average. It's not even close to what it is now, relatively speaking. The balance is extremely unbalanced. So when I look at that, I say to myself, yeah, it's easy for somebody who's been rich for 20 years to lecture the people coming up now about just, strapping up their boots and getting their hands dirty and getting out there and working hard. I get that. I advocate for hard work. But the reality is you're in a system that's rigged for you to lose. If you're not born in the right family, right? You don't pick the right industry, like you got into IT 10 years ago. You're not extremely fortunate on social media, dang near winning the lottery, being one of these famous people. You're not selling your body online or getting into salacious work online, compromising yourself, whether in the business world, entertainment world, political, what so have you. Or you're just not downright scamming like so many people are. I mean, like they are here in Miami, South Florida, where I live, right? It's not cut dry, black and white like it used to be. It is so much more complicated now to level up and actually achieve the American dream and generational wealth.
Capitalism works, because that version of it stopped existing a long time ago.
Exactly.
The generation of people who started as beneficiaries of a more equitable system changed the rules once the roles were reversed and they had the power. So what the hell happened? Everything was going great. What changed? Well, there were a lot of things, obviously, but one of the first big dominoes was the US's involvement in the Vietnam War, which was expensive and deadly, but to be fair, also accomplished nothing. And this had long-term ramifications. America had been diverting so much money away from manufacturing and towards defense that it opened the the door for other growing industrialized countries to surpass them. More and more products were becoming cheaper to import than they were to produce. This led to factories getting shut down, unemployment starting to creep back up. A recession hits, and we're now facing a pivotal fork in the road in the late 70s. Either we could go back to what worked in the past, prioritize the working class, reinvest into our own infrastructure, try to help lift people out of poverty they've fallen into through no fault of their own.
This 19-year-old who used to work construction from the age of 16 just made $244K in 90 days using AI and even bought himself a McLaren.
Or we say, fuck the government, we don't owe you shit, we're stupid, isn't that right?
I don't even know my own name.
Exactly. The deal is you pay taxes and we don't do anything. And you like that, right? They like that?
Sounds good to me.
The prevailing philosophy throughout the 80s became trickle-down economics. The logic being, oh man, these rich people are really handcuffed. You know, I bet if we lower the corporate tax rate from 70 all the way to eventually 28%, then companies will use all that extra money to pay their employees more. I mean, if there's one thing we know about rich people is that they're always looking out for the little guy.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. The more money you give the corporations in tax cuts, I used to believe that. I used to believe that, oh no, it'll trickle down and they'll pay better. And I forgot, humans are naturally selfish, greedy, deceitful. You have to unlearn that stuff, right? And usually, I hate to say it, the richest people, more times than not, have gotten there by way of corrupt means. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Now, for some reason, this hasn't worked out yet, but it's only been 55 years, so the jury's still out. See, I would argue that part of the reason why companies in the 40s and 50s were so generous with their extra profits was because the tax rate was so high. I mean, think about it. If you're faced with the decision between giving a huge chunk of money to the government or redistributing it back to the employees who helped you earn it in the first place, you would be much more likely to...
We need to instill that back again. You might say, oh, you're saying that because you're not a billionaire and you're not super rich. Own corporations with hundreds, if not thousands of employees. And yeah, okay, I don't have all that yet. But it makes sense. You got to force people's hands. Hey, look, they're going to hide money in the Cayman Islands and other places anyways, like they are now. But you must incentivize them to pay people properly so that America can really come back. Make America great again. That's how you do it.
Do the latter, because it's an investment in your own company. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. Well-compensated workers are proven to be more loyal and more productive, and those are two things that you want. Now, there were other factors as well, loosening a lot of anti-monopoly regulations, the legalization of stock buybacks, but this dramatically lower tax rate is a big reason why the 80s serves as the dividing line on just about every economic graph you could look at. This was the beginning of a long and continuous transfer of wealth from the working class to the top 1%. And while it would be very easy to just blame all of this on then President Reagan, that would only be mostly true. Sure, this new approach opened the door for more exploitation and greed, but you still needed a few scumbags willing to go through that door for the evolution to be complete. And nobody sprinted through it faster than one man. The real-life cartoon villain who designed the blueprint that most modern CEOs are still following to this day. His name was Jack Welch, and he's often referred to as the man who broke capitalism. During his tenure as CEO of General Electric, he turned the once quintessential American company that reshaped people's lives and supplied hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs all across the country into a worthless carcass and a joke of a corporation, all while he became one of the richest people on the planet. In the century before...
Remember what I said about the richest getting there by corrupt means? Jack Welch, there you have it. There you have it. There you have it. Ronald Reagan gave room for people like him to do this in the 1980s. And the 80s was glorious. We had hip hop coming on the scene in the 80s. MJ had his glory years, much of which was in the 80s. So many amazing songs. Culturally, the 80s were phenomenal. But I didn't even know this. Jack Welch, General Electric. Yeah. And we were still very much factory based as far as jobs because technology wasn't there yet. This is huge. So the shift happened around that time, after the civil rights era. And then we came into the modern era of the 90s into the 2000s. And here we are.
Before Jack Welch took the reins, GE invented things like X-ray machines, jet engines, TVs, radios, and just about any kitchen appliance you can think of. In the 1980s, Jack invented laying people off. That was his big idea. What if we just fire a bunch of people? And then we don't have to spend as much money. It seems so simple and obviously very commonplace today, but before Jack, companies were not doing this. It was almost seen as un-American to fire somebody unless you absolutely had to. But Jack didn't think like everybody else. He was a pioneer. He bravely instituted the rank and yank system, where every year the bottom 10% of employees would get laid off no matter what. Not because they all deserved to be fired, but just because they fell on the wrong side of a spreadsheet. What's that? You were 3 years away from retirement and now you no longer qualify for pension? Okay, then die. And to be clear, the layoffs were also not because the company wasn't profitable. It very much was, but it just...
Again, they turned America into a cold, hard corporation. It already was, but that makes so much sense. This is when the American dream started to die, is because you stop looking at Americans, the beating heart of the country. You stop looking at them like human beings and just numbers on a spreadsheet. Slowly but surely, 1980s, 90s, 2000s, 2020s. Here we are. And this is why there's so much disconnection between people, neighbors, companies, employees. The social fabric of the US right now is dying. Jack Welch. Wow.
This wasn't profitable enough. See, when you routinely shut down entire facilities, you uproot thousands of lives, you create a toxic and selfish work environment where loyalty is replaced with fear, and if you're a company with the size and influence that GE had at the time, you can almost single-handedly destroy any semblance of a middle class across all of America. But this number gets a little bit bigger. So it's kind of a fair trade. GE was at the forefront of this countrywide philosophical transition from an economy that cared about making things and rewarding the labor it took to do so, to an economy that only cared about shareholder value and would prioritize anything it could to make that number go up. But the thing about the stock market is it's mostly just about perception. As long as something seems to be growing in value, then people will be more likely to invest in it, which will in turn cause it to be more valuable, even if it shouldn't be. A lot of what Jack did during his time as CEO did not make the company better, but it did make it bigger. And in the eyes of Wall Street, that was all that mattered. I mean, come on, a business that relies on something boring like selling products can only grow so much. But a company that's constantly acquiring other companies simply has...
So crazy. Continue to hollow out America, right? The American dream. So interesting. And you can see this across every industry. You look at McDonald's. Look at the food industry, right? They used to cook the meat in beef tallow. Now it's cooked in highly refined seed oils. You see how we went from real to fake because everything became about numbers, whether it's General Electric, whether it's any major fast food chain, whether it's Walmart, whatever it is. You look at any one of these industries, rewind the tape 50 plus years ago, and the quality is completely different. Everything becomes about money. Money, 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 money. And the people that benefit are the ones that are running it because they don't care about people anymore. But then they want you to keep voting for them. The American dream. They don't care. There must be a revolution.
There's no ceiling. I mean, they could be worth infinity dollars when you think about it. So that's what they did. Over the next few decades, GE bought and sold hundreds of companies, and Jack was lauded for his brilliance because from the outside, everything seemed to be working. I mean, sure, they were becoming a bloated, nonsensical hodgepodge of unrelated businesses, eroding the company's infrastructure and prioritizing constant quarterly gains over any long-term sustainability, but no one gives a shit because the stock price has never been high. They've stumbled upon an infinite money glitch. They're just alchemizing value out of thin air. It gets to a point where the company founded by Thomas Edison doesn't even make their own light bulbs anymore. It's cheaper to get them somewhere else. Who cares? All they care about now is their ballooning financial division. They're issuing high-interest loans. They become a massive holder of subprime mortgages, a famously good investment to make in the early 2000s. Literally whatever it took to juice the numbers, that's what they would do. After about 30 years of short-term decisions that received instant gratification from shareholders but were gradually making things worse for the company and its dwindling number of employees, GE had become severely overvalued. And it wasn't until right after Jack retired with his $400 million severance package where his successors stepped in and were like,
wait, this doesn't make any sense.
The time bomb Jack planted explodes in their faces and GE spends the next 20 years slowly bleeding out. And at this point, they couldn't fall back on just like selling microwaves because they'd been cutting corners on production so long that nobody wanted to buy any of their shitty garbage anymore. And of course, they had fallen way too far behind on innovation because they spent all their money on acquisition.
Go back to what I said. Remember, Massive wealth gained by corruption, lies, and deceit. Look at him. He gets his bag, 400 plus million. He's out of there. The company tanks right after. And who takes the fall? All the middlemen, the employees, right? And that's the thing. You reap what you sow. It always comes back around. It always comes back around. The company, GE, now, I don't even know. I mean, they still exist, but I don't know what the quality of them is at this point.
Positions instead of research. By 2021, the company that helped bring electricity to America was mercifully laid to rest, split into 3 separate institutions, none of which have come close to the dominance or influence that GE once had over the American economy. But here's the thing. You know who isn't affected at all by the cataclysmic downfall of General Electric? Jack Welch, because he's dead now. He already got to live his entire life of luxury and adoration without ever having to deal with the fallout caused by his actions. He took control of a building with a rock-solid foundation and just kept scrapping it for parts until the only thing left for it to do was collapse under its own weight. But by that point, he was long gone. I believe that this is the goal of those who now follow in his footsteps. They don't need to care about whether or not what they're doing is harmful or unsustainable. As long as the facade can be maintained long enough for them to reap the rewards, it doesn't matter that the ship is sinking behind them because they have a lifeboat. It doesn't matter that America spent the past 60 years exporting all its jobs and decimating the economies of small towns all across the country because a few hundred people responsible for those things already got to live long, happy lives. They don't give a shit. This cut through,
which is so crazy. Dang, he's so right. Look at the billionaires. I know Elon is young, but a lot of the people that are older in politics that have a ton of power and money, they're all older. Look at the career politicians that have been there for 30, 40 plus years. Some of them have passed recently in the last few years. They lived an amazing life. Insider trading, all type of backdoor deals with foreign countries. They're just filthy rich. It's crazy. Like, this is so accurate.
Cutthroat corporate culture that Jack pioneered is still seen all around us today, and through the magic of time, it's only getting worse. CEOs make $1,000 every second, while their employees have to piss in water bottles so they don't fall behind. Routine layoffs, regardless of if a company is even struggling, are so normalized that it's just something we've come to expect. The stock market rules the world. Every major decision is dictated by this inherently volatile and short-sighted metric, and look at where that's gotten us. Millions without jobs, an enshittification epidemic, and a concentration of wealth that should be seen as a threat to humanity. Even while owning everything, billionaires live in fear of losing it. So they weasel their way into politics, they influence elections, they buy policy changes, they use their wealth to reshape the world to benefit them even further. They try to control narratives by buying up news outlets. They can dictate what's on our social media feeds. They spend an enormous amount of resources on pitting us all against each other. So
with that being said, you better learn about stocks. I know I am, because here's the thing. Most of y'all can't beat them. I'm not saying to join them, but I am saying you better learn about the stock market. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to post a link for the entire video. The greed is real in 2025 going into 2026. It's not a game. I say the lifeboat or life jacket on the lifeboat, rather, out of here is a passport, which you will need. Right here. This is accepted in the majority of the countries in the world upon entry. Learn how to make remote income, invest in the stock market, and man, you better travel overseas and get your multiple locations so you can leverage that US dollar in another country. That's what I'm going to do. See you on the next one.